Hello, this is KYC News. We have provided you with relevant and reliable information for the day. First and foremost, we wish him good health and heartfelt desire. Here are the main points. On a visit to Malaysia, the minister claims that Australia is part of Asia. Defending his post regarding the plus-size Sports Illustrated model, Jordan Peterson. On a visit to Malaysia, the minister claims that Australia is part of Asia. When visiting the city in Malaysia where she was born, Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong claimed that her experience proved that Australia was a part of Asia because, according to recent statistics, more than half of all Australians were either born abroad or to immigrants. Wong made an official visit to Malaysia and stopped in Kota Kinabalu, the state capital of Sabah, where she spent her formative years for 8 years before moving to Australia. On her first trip to Malaysia since a Labour government took office last month, she told the reporters, "This is a very Australian experience since 1 in 2 Australians were either born overseas or have parents who were born overseas. It's important for Australia to communicate with Southeast Asia in a way that acknowledges our shared history and future with the region," she added. For the first time, the results of a census done every 5 years and announced on Tuesday, June 28, revealed that 51.5% of Australians were either born abroad or had immigrant parents. We live in a multicultural and varied country. It is one of Australia's assets, and we ought to convey that story more throughout the region, she spoke. In a speech the previous day, Wong described how her Hakka Chinese grandmother had raised her children by herself in Sabah after the majority of her family perished in World War II. At the University of Adelaide, Wong's father received an Australian scholarship, which allowed him to rise out of the poverty he endured as a boy. He got married to an Australian woman, and they settled back in Kota Kinabalu to start a family. 20 years have passed since Mahathir Mohamad, a former Malaysian Prime Minister, made the infamous statement that Australia could not join an East Asian diplomatic group because they are Europeans, they cannot be Asians. Wong's remarks and official visit to Malaysia coincide with that statement. Mahathir subsequently stated in a 2019 newspaper interview that immigration would cause Australia to be more Asian than European in the future. Late on Friday, Mahathir sent Reuters an email in which he expressed his pride at having an Australian foreign minister who was born in Malaysia and his belief that all countries would eventually have a diverse population due to easy travel and porous borders. According to the census, the top source countries for the nearly 1/3 of Australian residents who were born abroad were Britain, India, China, New Zealand, and the Philippines, with Asian countries collectively being a bigger source than Britain and New Zealand. Defending his post regarding the plus-size Sports Illustrated model, Jordan Peterson. Even after receiving a lot of criticism for the remarks, controversial psychologist Jordan Peterson stood by his previous tweet in which he ridiculed a plus-sized Sports Illustrated model. On May 16, the Canadian doctor-turned-YouTuber tweeted a statement from a story in the post about Yumi Nu, the Sports Illustrated cover model, then apologized. "Not attractive. And authoritarian tolerance won't be able to change that." He announced his departure from the well-known social media app hours later amid criticism. Peterson maintained his position and said the post was not a mistake, nor was it the reason I left Twitter, in an email to The Telegraph on Thursday. He stated, the usage of that model, who was not athletic, remember, Sports Illustrated, was manipulative both in terms of the model herself, albeit she engaged in her own exploitation, and in terms of economics. A goal is beauty. Nearly every one of us falls short of a standard. I won't give up any ideal for the sake of fake compassion. Period. Not the epitome of athletic beauty either. The 60-year-old claimed he urged his staff to keep him off social media while his account was still active. In an interview with the publication, he continued, "I told my staff to change my password, to keep me from temptation, and am traveling once more. I'll create a video or write an essay if I have something to say. It could be best to just leave the problem go if it is not significant enough to warrant that." But the pause didn't last long. After criticizing transgender actor Elliot Page for her sin, Peterson, who inked a podcast agreement with right-wing news outlet The Daily Wire on Thursday, had his account suspended from Twitter this week. Online screenshots depict the offending tweet from the departed University of Toronto professor, which reads, "Remember when pride was a sin?" And a criminal doctor just removed Ellen Page's breasts. Twitter alleged that Peterson violated the platform's anti-hateful behavior standards. Peterson said in an interview with The Telegraph that just because some people see aspects of themselves in the opposing gender does not necessarily mean they are in the wrong body. He continued, "So the notion that there is fluidity and overlap in gender personality is valid. What isn't true is that you're in the incorrect body. It's not even remotely accurate." NATO asserts that it is defensive. Cheese of the century. Li Jianzhao, the spokesperson for China's foreign ministry, criticized the assertions made by NATO officials about the military alliance's defensive nature by posting a graphic design on his Twitter account. Is NATO a defense alliance? This is the funniest joke ever. He posted something on Twitter. In this graphic, it was mentioned that NATO has bombed the former Yugoslavia, Iraq, Libya, and Afghanistan, and that this was a sign of the alliance's aggression. At the most recent NATO summit in Madrid, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg identified China and Russia as direct threats to the security of NATO countries. Ohio and Texas top courts approve implementation of abortion bans. After the U.S. Supreme Court eliminated the constitutional right to abortion nationally last week, the top courts in Texas and Ohio on Friday permitted the Republican-led states to implement limitations and prohibitions on abortions. After the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the important 1973 Roe v. Wade decision and eliminated women's constitutional right to abortion, the Texas Supreme Court late on Friday authorized a nearly century-old abortion ban to go into effect. The order came the same day the Ohio Supreme Court gave the state permission to implement a 2019 ban on abortions at 6 weeks of pregnancy, allowing for civil enforcement of the statute but not criminal prosecution. The two decisions came 1 week after the conservative majority U.S. Supreme Court reinstated states' rights to outlaw abortion, sparking a wave of legal actions to protect women's right to self-abortion. Following a plea by the state's Republican Attorney General, Ken Paxton, the Texas Supreme Court reversed a temporary restraining order that had been imposed by a judge on Tuesday and permitted abortions to resume in the state up to the already restricted 6 weeks of pregnancy. The attorneys for the abortion clinics that brought a lawsuit against the 1925 ban vowed to keep fighting. After the arguments scheduled for July 12, a lower court judge might once again enjoin the law, according to the clinics. According to Julia Kay, an attorney with the American Civil Liberties Union who is defending the Texas abortion clinics against the ban, "We won't stop fighting to guarantee that as many people as possible, for as long as possible, may get the important reproductive health care they need." Since last week, abortion rights organizations have challenged anti-abortion laws in 11 states, and judges in Florida, Louisiana, Kentucky, and Utah have blocked the enforcement of restrictions or bans. The orders on Friday came as New York and New Jersey, two states with a Democratic governor, moved to strengthen abortion rights within their borders. Governor Phil Murphy of New Jersey signed legislation that enables women to travel to the state for abortions without worrying about facing criminal charges or civil lawsuits from their home states. Additionally, the legislation included new legal safeguards for New Jersey-based reproductive healthcare professionals who perform interstate abortions. The right to an abortion and the right to contraception were both codified in a state constitution amendment that the New York Senate approved. A national right to abort any pregnancy up until the point of fetal viability outside the womb, which is often between 24 and 28 weeks of gestation, had been guaranteed by Roe. At roughly 6 weeks of gestation, when embryonic heart activity can be initially detected before many women even know they are pregnant. SB. Ohio's 23 statute outlaws abortion. The Ohio law was overturned in the federal courts before Republican Governor Mike DeWine signed it into effect. However, a federal judge lifted the injunction prohibiting its implementation hours after the Supreme Court's ruling. The state constitution of Ohio, according to the Republican Attorney General Dave Yost, does not recognize a right to abortion. The plaintiffs should pursue their policy aims through the political process, not the courts, he claimed in a statement. Also on Friday, Planned Parenthood and other abortion clinics filed a case against two state abortion bans, one from 1910 and the other passed this year, before the Oklahoma Supreme Court. John O'Connor, the Attorney General of Oklahoma, did not respond to a request for comment right away. Tuesday's 8-1 decision by the Oklahoma Supreme Court approved the implementation of yet another abortion restriction in the state.